time, I was at my lowest low. The rain was hitting harder than usual as I lay there, unable to sleep or ignore the problems that were gnawing at me. It wasn't just that, it was the loneliness of it all. I couldn't talk to anyone. I didn't feel like I could hear myself. But there to cut through it all was a song that played through the dark. Don't worry, love, you're not alone. David Bowie's lyrics didn't even echo through my mind or the room, they just shot right through. As his vocals swept through and you could hear the cracks in his tearful singing, the brass would flare louder and with warmth, and a single violin pierced through it all. All of it was required to really amplify the final chord in the lines. All the knives seem to lacerate your brain. I've had my share, I'll help you with the pain. And I heard it, and then the rain felt a little softer, my bed a little warmer, and my mind just a little more rested. There have been a few times like this in my life, as I'm sure there have been for everyone. Life is just like that, with those intense periods of sadness and not knowing if it'll ever clear up. But they often do, even if it takes time. For me at least, during that time, so much of what's important is finding ways to have hope. And so much of that comes from the movies and books and music that I find that just speaks to me about how there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And over time, because I found some hope, it helped me to find my way and go forward. I don't think helpful stories are something magical that solve all your problems, but they help. Whatever you need ultimately comes from yourself, but sometimes those stories show you where to look and where to go. Today it often feels like there's so much to be cynical about. The state of the world and how it often glares at us through the intense stream of the social media doesn't ever seem to leave our minds. It's not just politics. It's the way we perceive ourselves and others with so much negativity. Many, including me, would turn to escapism with stories about fantastical adventures that leave out the complicated mess, and it's hard to blame someone for that. But I think there are different kinds of stories that we can turn to as well. I think there are those stories that can give us hope and let us remember what it is we're fighting for. I think one of the biggest and more obvious causes of our cynicism comes from our social media usage. It's easy to get lost in it, and all its negativity. According to the American Psychological Association, 41% of teens with the highest social media use rate their overall mental health as poor or very poor, compared with 23% of those with the lowest use. Social media acts as a pit, where its content often is meaningless or instills negativity and criticism. At best, it is escapism. At worst, it can cause further spirals and despair. Even more, it's overwhelming. Political content on social media is often toxic and filled with political hostility. Statements from Ariel Hassel, who authored a study at University of Michigan on social media, politics, and their connection to cynicism. The hostility present in the world, plus the fact that no matter what side you're on, the world seems screwed, just adds to the stresses anyone can feel. It often makes me feel overwhelmed and anxious, scared that maybe the world isn't going to get better. With that, it becomes even easier to just turn to escapism, to pretend those issues don't exist, and not face them head on. This escapism doesn't really help long term. In the context of stories and fiction, I don't believe it to really be harmful short term, I guess, but I think that at its core, it's avoiding dealing with those problems that torment your mind. It certainly feels that way for me when I escape to mindless action or shallow comedies. Not that they're bad, but they can't be the only thing. They help alleviate immediate issues, but they don't inspire or change anything on their own. Therapist Lynn Reed claims that if we don't deal with our issues and if we avoid them, we could be at risk of developing a higher level of depressive symptoms. Avoidance isn't the key to feeling better in the end. Sometimes it's necessary for a bit, but a true closure, true growth, whatever you're trying to find, requires work, and that work can only come through if you have hope and inspiration. Hope is important in so many aspects. It's what inspires you to move forward, even when the odds are against you. According to Adam Stern, MD at Harvard Health, hope is an essential factor for developing both maturity and resilience. Developing that resilience is so important for continuing onwards. I think the best way we can find hope somewhere beyond our own lives is through fiction. Researchers at the New School in New York City have found evidence that literary fiction improves a reader's capacity to understand what others are thinking and feeling, which shows that we really do connect to what's happening in stories. We feel the characters' emotions, such as their despair and their hope. If we can feel that hope, perhaps we'll find it within ourselves as well, and it may act as an inspiration for us in our own life. To see someone else crawl through and persevere in their own dark times can perhaps give us the courage to do so in our own way. Psychologist Maja Dijak explains that before positive changes in ourselves, there's often a period of instability caused by life events, and that fiction generates this in a safe and controlled environment. By simulating that growth, we give ourselves room to examine ourselves and lives, reflect, and grow. These are so important for moving and growing as a person and moving beyond the pits of despair. We're often surrounded completely by cynicism and stress in our world. It seems in our modern age, social media and a heated political climate cause so much of this. It becomes so easy to turn to escapism. However, this isn't the only type of story we should use to cope with this stress. I believe we need hopeful stories to inspire us and move us forward through dark times. I believe we need them because they can help us through the process in our lives as we connect and become inspired by whatever journeys those stories follow. To close, I want briefly to talk about one of the most famous and longest standing characters, Superman. It seems easy to see him as an escapist fantasy who doesn't have his own problems, who goes on fantastic journeys. However, I think the reason he's been so popular is deeper than that. He's always at his best for me when he's dealing with the same problems we face: a complicated love life, world problems he can't solve, grief, self doubt, his own identity. Despite this, Superman finds a way. He's a symbol of hope because he keeps standing up for what's right despite his own problems, because he finds a way through. And for me at least, I always find myself inspired by him to find my own way.